This episode is brought to you by Midwest Night Watchers, found everywhere on your favorite podcast platforms.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to a special edition of Piercing the Veil.
Yes, a special edition. And we've got a special guest from the UK. So that's why we're here in the afternoon.
Yep. So we'll get started here in a moment. And we just wanted to let you guys know that this is a new subject for me anyway. Jane's been following it for a while, and Paul has a book out on it and teaches a lot on it. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, everyone knows I love rabbit holes, and I was going down the Tartaria old world and came across Paul, and then I discovered the clowns, and I ended up getting the book. I'm in the middle of it right now, so I thought I'd reach out to him and have him present this to everyone. It's a totally different subject than the Sasquatch, UFOs, orbs that we normally get into. So we would like to introduce you to the history of clowns and where they came from and how dark they are.
Awesome. So
it's definitely going to be a long, not a long show, but we're going to bring him up right away and just have him get going. So I hope everyone enjoys the show.
All right, here we go. We'll bring Paul up.
Hi,
welcome, Paul.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for coming to our show. Thank you very much.
No problem at all. No, I'm always happy to talk about the clowns. It's what I do. It's what I do. Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
So, yeah, you actually started out around 2016, correct? When the clowns kind of showed up.
That was the thing that really sparked my research into this particular topic. Yeah, the 2016 clown sightings. I think everyone remembers it. It's kind of like burnt into our memories. So just a group of strange people suddenly all over the Western world were cropping up on street corners and at the edges of parks and in parking lots and in forests, just creeping people out and standing menacingly with balloons or weapons in some cases as well, you know. And what caught my attention is that every single news station and their mother was talking about this. It was ridiculous, you know, and whether it was international news, national news, or local news, this was being talked about, you know, and presented quite often. And I couldn't believe that would be the case, you know. It was because it seemed like it was such an isolated, silly incident where somebody's just doing something in their own area wouldn't break national news, you know, guys dressed like a clown. But why did it, you know? And by this point, I knew enough about the occult, secret societies, symbolism in the media to know that nothing goes on that box in the corner of your room unless they want it there and they want you to see it. It's all symbolism, it's all signs, it's all messages to these people who control everything. So I knew the clown then. Okay, that means something. This is a message of some kind. I don't know what yet by that point, but I knew there's something there. And I kind of had my own history in studying the biblical history, you know, and being born again in 2014, kind of swimming in that extra biblical kind of world of Enoch and the Book of Giants and Jasher, talking about watchers mating with human women to create giant hybrid creature monsters that were eating people, and learning all of that kind of made me understand that, okay, we have this odd demonic phenomena where we have the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim now on the earth, which are causing problems even to this day, But I didn't really know much about demons by that point, just understood where they came from. But I did have enough of experience in my past life with psychedelics and all sorts of things, experimented with that for many years, where people were talking about seeing jesters and clowns when in this odd spirit realm. And like I said, a very, very long series of events kind of led me to click in that moment in 2016, where I was like, wait a minute, clowns have something to do with demons, and then I just rolled with that idea. And here I am 8 years later with a book published, about 44 episodes on YouTube dedicated to the concept. And it just kept rolling, and I did not see that coming. I didn't realize that would be the case. My first few episodes of the series are just the ramblings of a madman. It's just me like throwing everything at the wall, just seeing what sticks to try and figure out what am I looking at here? What is going on? And as the years went on, I kind of refined it and I realized there's actually a lot here. And to sum it up very quickly, what I discovered is the costume of a clown in the West was purposefully created by secret societies as a copy or a mimic of the same costumes worn by many cultures all over the earth to channel ancestor spirits, which are the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim. The clown is just the Western version of the same thing, and it's hidden from us. We're not supposed to know that, but it turns out, follow the history, clowns have always been a representation of the demonic, going from Europe to India to the modern day, and we'll talk about that today.
Cool.
Well, there's a reason why people have a fear of clowns also.
Yeah, coulrophobia. It's actually really common, more common than you would think. I mean, heights are up there, spiders and snakes are up there, reasonable things to be scared of. Like, why wouldn't you be scared of a snake or a spider or heights, because there's a real tangible danger we can all relate to there. But clowns, but they're actually they're like in the top 10, and it's, why do they deserve such a high pedestal when it comes to a fear? And at first it seems like something silly. People have tried to explain it away. There's always an argument or an article every year. They always post the same article every year around the Halloween period. Why are people scared of clowns? Scientists have discovered the odd fear of clowns and the reasonings behind it. And they'll always tell you it's because of the uncanny valley situation, where it's almost human but not quite. And that makes us naturally uneasy when something just misses the mark on being human but is trying to be. It makes us feel strange, But then they also say masks, people are untrustworthy of people who wear masks because you can't read their emotions. You don't know. It's like a predator issue. You don't really know what they're thinking, so you can't gauge them. And that also makes us uncomfortable. But what I think is, based on my research, these are quite literally like the representations of man-eating predators, and we were once its prey. We're naturally scared of something that looks like that because it's kind of just deeply ingrained, embedded into our collective DNA throughout the centuries, that you see that thing, you run, because what else are you going to do? And the obviously bright colors and the rest of it are danger symbols as well in the animal kingdom. Something that's brightly colored.
Are mimes a part of this too?
Yeah. Well, mimes are an offshoot of a French tradition of Puero, which we could talk about as we go on, where that comes from Pedrolino. And mimes also go back to Rome. When you actually look into it, the first mimes were about 500 AD and less, and to the Greek Attic theatre about 300 years prior as well. And basically, mimes are people who put on a mask and pretend to be something else. Mimics. Mimes, they're mimicking things. But as it progressed into the modern age, they become this thing in their own sense, which is modeled after the character of Puero from the French tradition. So I'll explain the history as we get into this, but and we'll circle back to mimes. But symbolically speaking, just while we're on mimes, we classically understand a mime to do that trick where they're kind of trapped in a box,
right?
Yeah.
There's nothing they can do about it, and they can't speak. You can't hear them. They scream, but they've got no noise. Well, symbolically speaking, that is a perfect representation of the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim, who are trapped in this place with no body, and they're trying to communicate with us, but we can't hear them or see them or perceive them anymore unless we allow them in through other means. And psychedelics is one way.
Right.
Costumes are another way. So that's kind of where my work gets into this.
Then the picture of the mime I just showed also had the slits going across the eyes.
Yeah, again, that's a typical predator trait. It's has a purpose. It's so they can get a better view of a horizon and pinpoint focus on their prey when they're hunting. You'll find prey animals tend to have horizontal pupils to get a wider scope of the landscape around them so they can detect predators. And the eyes are usually on the side of the head as well, but predators have them on the front of the head. Like humans, because we're hunters as well, in our own way, But the slit pupil gives that advantage to get a more focused view on your prey at a longer distance and a more narrow kind of focus. Snakes have them, reptiles have them. I think 2 species of birds have it. Cats, it's quite common in felines, and I think there's 1 canid that has it as well. So it's predominantly a reptilian trait, predominantly, but there are others, cats and reptiles. Yeah,
cool.
But that's that trait on the clown makeup. What we'll get into is that everything about a clown, traditionally speaking, is a caricatured exaggeration of a feature the Nephilim would have had: pale skin, slit pupils, cone heads in many cases, wild red hair, big wide grinning mouths, because of the serpentine nature of the physiology, which snakes have very wide maws and can eat eggs quite easily, dislocate their jaw to eat their prey type of stuff. The reptilian nature of the Nephilim is inherited from their fathers, which are the fiery flying serpents, the seraphim angels, which were dragons, basically. And you'll find everything about a clown is just a tongue-in-cheek reference to or mimic of or copy of a Nephilim feature. Yeah, including the clothes, the psychedelic skin that they would have had, specifically the white face as well, big shoes because they were giants, on stilts because they were giants, big gloves, big hands because they were giants, tiny hats, tiny umbrellas, tiny things, tiny props to accentuate their features because they were giants. It's all just symbolism to represent the Nephilim. And when you mimic something in the physical realm that is in the spiritual realm, you create a channel. You're mirroring something that does exist just beyond our perception. You're creating a portal, a doorway. You're allowing that thing into your body by dressing like it, basically. And this is an ancient practice that these cultures all over the earth do know about and still practice to this day. But in the West, we don't know that. We're not supposed to know that. We think it's nothing. We think dressing like something means nothing, and it's superstitious to think otherwise. We are a secularized, more atheistic society today. But also, because we have this Christian thing as the foundation of our civilization, if we did know that was the case, then they wouldn't have any power over us, because we very quickly know our authority in Jesus Christ to cast these things out. So it has to be occult. It has to be hidden for those reasons. And, I think today they are pushing the clown on us in ways, through media, in pernicious ways, to get more and more people to dress that way and to adopt these aesthetics, these styles, to create more portals and channels for the demons to come back into our realm through people. I think that is actually going on, a real agenda. It's dark. This rabbit hole, honestly, rabbit hole, what I did not know it would end up like this. I don't even care about clowns. Clowns are not a thought to me and never have been my entire life.
Right.
It's just, I just pulled on a thread and it just kept coming, and it hasn't ended, and like I said, I'm writing the 2nd volume now of my book. Which was 300 pages to begin with, and I'm probably going to write another 400 more at this rate, because there's just so much here. And it's my work is about spiritual warfare. And
speaking of your book, I'll bring it up so people can see what it looks like, and you can get this on Amazon, and people are sharing it in our link so they can find it. And
that's the one. My wife helped me design that.
So that'll be interesting if you're going to have a series of books out. That'll be great.
I think two will be enough. The first book is called The History, and it lays out where the Nephilim come from, the whole story behind that, all the theories surrounding many things. If you've been reading my book, you'll know. It goes through the history of how they made it past the flood, how they came about to begin with, what happened to the people who followed them, and kind of the rebellion of the angels. It's kind of like an all-in-one story from a Christian contrarian viewpoint to kind of explain the Nephilim and where demons come from. That's the first half of the book. And then the second half goes into the history of the clown, the costume, the involvement of secret societies, going through to the Shriners, to the Royal Order of the Jesters, and then going into the psychedelic community and their experience with DMT and the Jesters in the spirit realm. And then it kind of ends with a hint of what's to come in the second book, which is about the cultures all over the earth that still channel these entities by dressing in what we would call clown costumes. But they don't call them clown costumes. They call them representations of the ancestor spirits or something like that. You know, it's very serious business for them. It's sacred, in fact. To us, the clown's just a trivial, silly thing for the kids. We are so far removed from what it really means. Like we are so fooled and tricked into understanding what a clown represents. It's not even funny. It's not. My tagline is, "It's no laughing matter" for the book, because it's just not when you actually get into it. It's serious, you know.
Talking about people that really dedicate themselves, or their ancestry is like Japan and China. And to me, it always brings up kabuki theater when I talk about white masks, and they have a wide range from, say, the geisha girl look, just innocent and plain, even still in the white makeup. But then you get to the devils and the evil spirits that they dress up with the masks, and almost the same kind of clown looking, but a little bit more evil.
Well, yeah, you find the Oni demons, which are the Japanese version of these things, the Nephilim, basically. You have to understand that the Nephilim have many names in every culture. But fundamentally, they're all talking about the same creatures that every civilization on Earth had to deal with at some point. They were everywhere. They were widespread. They took over the earth. They ruled as kings and rulers. You know, they were feared by everybody. They were giants. Who's going to stand against them? You know, it's that type of situation. This is before, you know, the edict by God to wipe them out from the lands of Canaan. This is pre-flood stuff. This is like when humanity didn't have a chance. They had nothing, you know, and they were corrupted and falling away and joining the giants in the debauchery and getting involved in the sacrifices to them as gods. It was a real messed up time before the flood. And you'll find the echoes of every civilization that dealt with these has made its way to the modern day. And it's kind of, people didn't really forget, but they have many different stories about how each culture dealt with them, which are unique, but they're all talking about encounters with the same species of creature. And the Japanese version is the Oni demon. That's what they call them, you know. But it's the Rakshasas in India. It's the Wanjinas in Australia. It's the Wild Man of Europe. You know, it's the City Car of North Americas, or it's I don't know. They have many names in Africa, like hundreds of different names. It just gets silly when you actually start looking into it. Geishas are one thing, but they're definitely a representation of a ghostly visage, something akin to what we would call a clown. And geishas do play the role of like a social comedian. Geishas are hired not as prostitutes. I think that's like a common misconception, but they're actually hired as like entertainers to say a bunch of businessmen get together. A geisha would come and join them in light conversation, but have like a play in that form. But then whenever the demons arrive, something like this, it's always pale white skin, big wide red mouth, red hair specifically. It's the traits actually weave through all the cultures. They're all the same. And it starts to get a little bit silly when you start having a look at it, you know. But yeah, it's fascinating. It's honestly like it gets wild. I have a file with like thousands of photos just showing the traits. Maybe we could just go through it.
We'll just let you go ahead and start, and we'll.
Right.
I'm sure some of the stuff I have is probably representative by what you've already have. So we'll just go with what you got.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Let me just check on the desktop. I think I've got my first one. I've got so many files and folders. So let me figure this out quickly.
We do too.
Well, that's what surprised me. Normally, over here in America, you hear clowns of the circus, Shriners, rodeo. But when I started watching and binge watching your shows, it's worldwide, and it goes back so far in history, and I was just shocked.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I know. I agree. It shocks me. Still shocks me. Actually, I still can't believe just how bad it is. You know, and how obvious it was. That's how the occult works. It was always there in front of our face the entire time. You know. Let me just apply to all here. I've got right. So I'll share this with you guys. Let me just quickly. It's been a while since I've used this format. I think if I present, share screen. I think it's requesting I'll allow that. I don't want to share a tab. an entire screen. Okay, I think it's going to echo through in a second. Let me know if you guys.
I got it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Are you ready for me to add it?
You can do. Yeah, I've just got a file here.
All
Can
right,
you guys?
here we go.
Okay, so what I'll do is I'll just full screen this, and you guys let me know if you can just see this whole thing when I line it up. Okay, so you can see these photos here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Right, perfect. So I'm just going to hide this. I'm still sharing, right? Nope, that's not working. That doesn't work like that. Okay. Let me just. Okay, so you guys can see this then. Is that right?
Yes.
Perfect. I'm just going to move this up a little bit because I've got something in my way.
If you do a share video file, then you can pick individual files in a folder and bring them up full screen.
Share individual file. Well, the thing is, I've just got this here. It's kind of like a slideshow. I can just kind of skip through.
All right,
that's
fine.
I mean.
That's perfect.
Yeah, right. So traditionally, clowns. This is kind of what we understand a clown to be, isn't it?
Right.
This is Joseph Grimaldi. He was like one of the most famous clowns in history. He is said to be the father of modern clowns today, and he performed from about 1780 to like 1830-ish or something like that, pretty much all his life, until he became completely arthritically incapable of moving anymore because he was just jumping around his entire career, but he was the one who came up with this type of costume, supposedly in history. This is what we understand to be the truth, and this is what all modern clowns have based their costume from ever since that time in 1799 when these costumes were first appearing, and he was the first one to sport it. Here's another example of him. They go 1778 to 1837, the greatest entertainer, and he is the one all modern clowns have copied. That's where we get the modern clown costume from, like Bozo, for example, or something like that. It's this guy. This is what people are emulating, and it's echoed through the ages, and it's become this today, something like this.
Right.
But that's only 200 years ago. That wasn't that long ago. When you really think about it, when clowns as we understand them today really came about into existence. And that's because it's actually, clowns go quite far back, further back than this, to be honest, than 200 years ago. But this is the image of a clown we have today is new. And it's because it was created recently for the nefarious purposes I explained earlier. Prior to that, the clown looked like this one here in the white rags. Right. And this is from the Commedia dell'arte movement. Okay, so the Commedia dell'arte movement was a troupe of wandering. Sorry, I'm meandering through some images here. The Commedia dell'arte was a troupe of wandering artists and actors who came out of Rome after it collapsed, and they were no longer really allowed to perform at that time period in Rome because acting was seen as a dirty, sinful, horrible profession full of liars and cheats who were prostitutes, basically pretending to be something they're not. So these actors who weren't really welcome in a newly Catholicized Roman country kind of left, and they spread all throughout Europe and put on their own little shows, very quick shows, improvised shows from village to village, from city to city. That's kind of what that was the shtick. They would basically be what you would call the first traveling circus. That's probably a good way to describe them. Okay. And it was just a ragtag group of out-of-work actors, basically, who teamed together to try and survive and put on their shows everywhere else. And I can't really see if I've got any photos down here of something from the Commedia dell'arte, but basically, what they would do is they would put on masks and they would just travel from village to village, and they would improvise. They would just be funny men who would come up with acts on the spot, and do funny things in these masks. And the masks represented very specific characters in Western society: the general, the diplomats, the servants, the soldier, the butcher, the baker, whatever. Just people that everyone would recognize. They call them stock characters. Okay.
Yep.
And it was a tradition that was alive for 1,000 years. These people traveled through Europe for 1,000 years, 500 AD to 1500 AD and then onwards. They were just traveling around, putting on these shows and mastering their craft, shall we say, mastering the art of improvisation and shows. And eventually it formulated into like quite a formulaic system. Like everyone knew what to expect when a specific character came onto the stage. And they looked something like this, all of them kind of were clowns in their own right, and all very distinctly unique in their own way with the way they like presented themselves. But something happened in about the late 1500s. This character appeared. This brand new stock character suddenly turned up out of nowhere. The one in the middle there. And he's called Arlecchino, or Harlequin is how he's pronounced in English, in British. Harlequin. So Harlequin, who is there with his checkered patterns on the back of clown there, he was the servant of the rich man. So there's the servant, there's the rich man underneath. And basically the comedy comes from him and the other servant, Pedrolino, kind of bouncing off of each other. So this is Pedrolino, classically understood. And this is Harlequin, or Arlecchino from an Italian perspective. These two are both servants of the rich man, but he is really clever, witty, brutish, harsh, kind of to the point, unruly, and he is dumb, like really dumb and basically a servitude, just doesn't have a thought of his own, very slow to get the point, So the quick-witted Harlequin and the slow-witted Pedrolino would have like a comedy routine based on that kind of dynamic. And the show developed over the years, and Harlequin would basically steal the daughter of the rich man and run away with her. So there he is with the daughter of the rich man, and he would run away with her because they're in love. So the old man and his other servant, Pedrolino, would run after them. And that's the show. That's the comedy. It's like a Looney Tunes chase scene for like an hour and a half, trying to get the daughter back from Harlequin, And that it was kind of mastered, it was a mastered show. Everyone knew what to expect during these shows. That's kind of what people came to understand. But where did Harlequin come from as a character? Because traditionally, the characters of the Comédie de l'Art are stock characters. You have to recognize them. Like the whole village has to know who that's supposed to be. It's kind of, they are well-known caricatures of well-known characters in reality. And no one could really, no one's really thought about it until I started looking into it. And people do know this, but it's not really talked about. But Harlequin was basically a representation of something called the Wild Man. And here's some representations, as I'm showing you now, the Wild Man of Europe. And the Wild Man is something that you would call Bigfoot, I suppose.
Yeah.
It's something very, very similar. And there's Pedrolino again in his servant rags, just very bland and plain, not colorful like this clown here. This is what he used to look like for a thousand years, just boring white, nothing special. And obviously Harlequin just suddenly rocks up as this new character. There he is in the background, Harlequin and Pedrolino on the left. And Harlequin was a pretty vicious character. He was rude, he was crude. He had this stick that he would poke at people's backsides and pretend to be a phallus, you know what I mean? And he would kind of he'd dance all over the stage. He'd mock people. He'd just be really mean and just pointlessly brutal. Do you know what I mean? Really brutal and scary looking. Look at his mask originally. It was really terrifying. It wasn't like a fun thing. It often had a horn on it as well. And it's because he represents the Wild Man of Europe, which is a club-wielding, man-eating giant, which was feared all throughout Europe.
Were Harlequins before court jesters?
Oh yeah. Well, kind of yes and no. We'll get into that in a second. Okay. But Harlequin is this guy. This is Harlequin. This is the Wild Man of Europe with his club, and this is what Harlequin is based off of, because all of Europe had this character, the Wild Man. It didn't matter where he went. He went to Portugal, or if the troop traveled all the way up into Russia, all the way across the expanse of the continent of Europe. They always had a wild man tradition where they venerated or had some kind of odd party involving the wild man. Here's another example. This is the cookery of Bulgaria. So that, with the sword there and the colors and everything else, is no different than the Harlequin I showed you earlier here with his sword. Can you see? It's the same character. And this is why it was incorporated into the Comédie de l'Art movement, because everyone would recognize the wild man when they saw it, because they all have their own tradition. This is the Kratos of Portugal. This is their version of the wild man. This is their traditional ritual they do every year, where they dress up like this and run through the village causing chaos and pestering the young women with their sticks. And it's kind of, and that's the tradition, you know, it's just their wild man tradition. And they all know they represent demons, devils. That's the point. And then they have a big feast and a big party, and they burn a giant version of it like a wicker man. And then they fast for 40 days afterwards. It's been very Christianized, but this is their ritual here. There's their giant version that they set fire to. And this is just in Portugal, you know, but if you spread across the entire land of Europe, yeah, they've got many versions of this. So Harlequin is like a mix between this wild beast character, which is everywhere. This is, I think this is in Romania. This is their version in Romania, which is very colorful, very wide grinning, very silly looking. And it's because they're representing something that really was around at some point, something that haunted them, you know, something that they can't forget. That's kind of stuck in their genetic memory. And they have these traditions venerating them that they don't really remember where they came from. You ask any of them, it's like, we don't know why we do it. It's just tradition, you know? But what they're representing are when the giants were around. You know, they're keeping alive these pagan traditions without really realizing why today. In Africa, they do the same thing to contact their ancestor spirits, you know? Across the whole earth, they do this for many reasons. In India, it doesn't matter what continent you go to. They're showing the same creatures over and over again, just with their own culturally aesthetics differences and styles. But the European flavor is the wild man, and this is where this character comes from. That's who he represents. He represents the Nephilim of Europe, shall we say. That's the best way to describe it. This is the Nephilim of India. This is what they look like in India. They weren't as hairy. They were more naked because it's probably hotter in India. This is what some of them look like in Africa. You know what I mean? It's kind of, they all have their own version of this. This is what it's like on the tip of South America. Okay, this is what this tribe does here. They kind of have their own way of representing these spirits on the other side. It's kind of, this is a random tribe in Papua New Guinea, a cannibalistic tribe, funnily enough.
Got the red nose.
And the red hair, yeah, exactly. Because they're trying to communicate with something, their ancestors. And when Harlequin turned up, he was that that's what he is. He is literally a representation of a European demon. There's no two ways about it. And his club, this thing he had, the slapstick as it was known, is actually a representation of the club that the giant used to walk around with. Because the tradition comes from the French story of the giants. And the French story of Harlequin is Helikins. And it was claimed to have been witnessed by a 10th century monk. And he wrote down his experience, this French monk at a monastery. And he talked about how he witnessed a giant with his band of roving demons come through this village and destroy everything before moving on. And that giant was called Helikins. So Harlequin is named after that one, more specifically, Arlecchino in the Italian tradition. But Harlequin was kind of also merged with Mercury and Dionysus, kind of like the Thracian cultures of that region of the Mediterranean. And it was kind of merged with those ancient gods to be more like Hermes. Can you see here? The messenger of the gods, the one with the feathers on his feet, you know. And the character of Harlequin was pretty light of foot. He was quite doing backflips all over the place, kind of looked like he was flying on the stage. You know, he had magical powers. He could whip the stage with his stick, his magic wand, and the whole scene would change, you know, because he had magical powers because he is a demon. But he was kind of merged with the brutal, hairy giants of the north of Europe with the lithe gods of the south of Europe on the Mediterranean. And that's why we get Harlequin looking the way he does. Kind of like a mix between the two. So Harlequin is a literal representation of ancient gods, fallen angels, and their offspring, the hybrid giants, the Nephilim themselves. So that's the first proto-clown character as it appeared in Europe for the first time, right there. And then, like I said, he had a partner, the other servants, Pedrolino. Pedrolino developed throughout the centuries along with Harlequin, especially into the latter 1600s, 1700s. He kind of came more of an Elizabethan look to him with the floppy ruffle around the neck, the floppy collar, very popular style of the Elizabethan era. But only rich people could afford stiff ruffles because they could afford the starch, you know. So poor people had floppy ruffles, and that's why the servant had a floppy ruffles. That's where the clown ruffle came from traditionally. But he, like I said, he was always plain, always boring, always wearing white. The complete opposite of Harlequin, the colorful demonic character, you know. But things changed in the 1700s when Joseph Grimaldi, as I mentioned earlier, that famous first clown, this guy took over as the character in Britain. So the tradition by this point had spread everywhere and stayed in places. In France, they had Poirot, the sad clown, a lot like the mime you showed me earlier. Poirot is very similar to Pedrolino, but had a lot more black incorporated. So this is the French version of Pedrolino. Pedrolino's the Italian tradition. This is the French iteration of the same character. And the French version of Pedrolino was very sad, crying all the time. He was upset because the daughter of the rich man, Columbine, only wants Harlequin. Why doesn't she want me? Oh, woe is me. I'm so sad type of character. Very, very French, you know, very much a sad clown, you know, because of unrequited love and heartbreak type of stuff. Here's another example of that. And then obviously Harlequin was the victor, the one who stole the woman and got the woman. But as time went on, Harlequin got a bit boring. Harlequin stopped being so demonic. Here he is when he first began. And then he turned into this thing on the right. And then he turned into this at the end in the blue. And he became a lot more fancy as the years went on. You know, can you see he developed to become a bit more of a prim and proper fancy lad about town rather than the brutish club-wielding beast he originally was, you know? It's kind of, he became pathetic compared to what he used to be. You know what I mean? He wasn't the demon character anymore. He was just a sad, lovesick fool, you know? And I think people were bored of it. It's kind of like, what? There's no fun in that, you know? So there's kind of this demonic vacuum in the tradition of the comedic arts, and especially... they just needed like a more funny character to turn up, and that vacuum got filled by the British clown, specifically by this actor Joseph Grimaldi, and he came with a brand new costume change, and it stopped being the boring white servant rags that you saw Pedrolino used to wear, and it became this monstrous thing instead out of nowhere. Like, where did this come from, you know? And history has given Joseph Grimaldi all the credit. It's like this one British actor came up with it, and since then, the clown character, Pedrolino, has always looked like this from that day forward. And because it was just such a hit, you know. But that's actually not the real story. So I did some research, and I looked into it, and I wrote about this. But really, no, he didn't come up with the costume at all. He was actually just the guy who put it on. He didn't design the thing. It was actually the son of a very famous Freemason called Charles Dibdin Jr., who created that costume. And I've got a picture of the guy here somewhere. Here he is, Charles Dibdin Jr. This is the son of a very, very, very powerful and famous media mogul of the time called Charles Dibdin Sr. Charles Dibdin Sr. was serious business. Like, he was a man very well connected in the entertainment industry. Like, anybody who was anybody, if they knew Charles Dibdin Sr., they were going places. This is his father here. Okay. So this guy, the adult, the father, like I said, very, very famous Freemason. He was a member of the Leicestershire Lodge. You can find eulogies written to the guy in their own records, in the minutes of their own Freemasonic meetings, which are public record. You can go and find them yourself. And they equate this guy to creating the music that was sung by the sailors of the British Navy during wartime. And it's because of his songs, the morale was kept up and the Britain was led to success, you know, and to victory. So this guy was like given accolades and awards and everything. He was renowned and loved by everybody within the industry. And he was just a powerful, well-connected Freemason who had a son. Okay. He also had a brother called Thomas Dibdin. Now, Thomas Dibdin was a member of the East India Company. The East India Company was a faction of the British militia that was colonizing India at the time. And it's more of a corporation than a part of the actual Navy in any way. But his brother worked for them and was a part of that unit of soldiers that was taking over that land. And his brother actually died over there in India. And Charles Dibdin here wrote a song dedicated to his brother called Old Tom Bowling. And that song is still sung today at the end of the proms, which is a very big orchestral event in Britain every year. It's still the closing ceremony song to this day, Old Tom Bowling. So he's still, again, he had impact on history, and no one knows about him until I brought him back up out of the records, you know. But he actually still ripples through to today how how much of an impact this guy had on British culture and the media and the music and entertainment. He wrote many plays, many songs, many shows that were on the stage. He was very much involved in the creative world. But so was his son Charles Dibdin Jr. And he was very well acquainted with India because of his brother. He loved India. In fact, in his own memoirs, Charles Dibdin Sr. was going to move to India, but he decided last minute, because of bad weather, not to travel. Because traveling then in bad weather would have killed you. You know what I mean? It's no easy thing to travel across the seas in that time period, you know. And he ended up staying in Britain in the end, but he was going to live there. He loved India, you know, and everything about it. So he was well acquainted with Indian iconography, is what I'm trying to say here. He knew a lot about India, you know. It's like he was traveled back in there many times to visit his brother, and I assume he took his son with him as well many times. It was a family affair, you know. So Charles Dibdin Jr., luckily, because of his dad's connections, gets a gig, he gets a job, and he gets to run up the theatre in which this very, very talented actor, Joseph Grimaldi, was working. And that's Joseph there. So he comes in, and he's been hired as the showrunner. So the son of this Freemason has been hired as the showrunner, and he has to come up with shows and plays for the theatre that this person's working in, called Sadler's Wells Theatre in London. Now, it turns out, if you go and look into Sadler's Wells Theatre, the guy who owns it is called Richard Hughes, okay? Another very powerful, rich businessman of the time, who's actually best friends with Charles Dibdin Sr. They're buddies, you know? So it's kind of the only reason Charles Dibdin Jr. got hired is because his dad knew a guy. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of nepotism at its finest. It's like my dad, you know, my dad got me this job because he's friends with the guy who runs the theatre type of thing. So it's very much, it's not what you know, it's who you know type of stuff going on here. But it turns out that it's a bit messy, the relationships that were going on at the time in this theatre, because this actor, Joseph Grimaldi, actually married the daughter of Richard Hughes, the owner of the theatre, and she was pregnant as well. So this is actually the son-in-law of the guy who owns the theatre. Okay, so unfortunately, Mary Hughes, Joseph Grimaldi's wife, died at childbirth, and so did the child. It was quite a horrible, tragic, sad moment in Joseph Grimaldi's life, as you can imagine, and he lost his mind. He was depressed. He was suicidal. He was on suicide watch. People had to watch him all the time. When he did go back to work, he shot himself in the foot with a prop gun, and it was out of commission because of that as well. It was a really horrible time for this guy. Okay, he was not having a good time of it. And on her deathbed, she said this to her brother, who is also called Richard Hughes, but I think it's because of the names they get confused. I think she said it to her father. There's a lot of repeat names in the historical records which don't make sense, because I can't find any record of her having a brother, but I know she had a father called Richard Hughes. So I think she said this to her dad. She said, "Please look after poor Joe." Those were her last words to her father. Look after him. Because she knew he wasn't going to be able to handle this on his own, basically, because he's a funny guy, Joseph Grimaldi, but he's a bit of a fool. He gets taken advantage of a lot. You know, he's very trusting when he shouldn't be, all that type of stuff. He lost his money repeatedly, and people swindling him and scamming him and all sorts of things. And she basically said to her dad, "Look after him, please. Like, I know he's not going to be your son-in-law anymore because I'm dead, but still look after him," basically. So it seems like that's exactly what Richard Hughes did. He hired this son of a Freemason, Charles Dibdin Jr., to run his theatre for him. And he said to the guy, "You give Joseph a leading role. You give him front and center leading roles from now on." In the past, Joseph had always kind of grown up in the theatre as like a backstage type guy, or doing minor roles on the show, on the stage, you know what I mean? Doing the pantomimes and stuff. But he was given a leading role as clown for the first time. And clown traditionally was always played by this French actor called Dubois. And Dubois was like a classically trained French guy, you know, but he was a bit stiff, a bit rigid, not very creative, you know, stuck to the routines type of guy. And he ended up being challenged, you know, by Joseph Grimaldi for the position of clown, and he ended up backing down in the end because Joseph was just better. He was just funnier, like way funnier than this French actor, you know. He just had a natural propensity to be funny, Everything about him was just hilarious. The way he carried himself, the way he spoke, the way he sung. He just oozed comedy out of every pore of his body. And it's just undeniable. The crowd loved him more than they loved the French guy, So Joseph Grimaldi became the brand new staple clown of the Sadler's Wells Theatre, thanks to his ex-father-in-law boosting him up a little bit with this new showrunner, But this new showrunner wanted to make his own mark on the industry. He's like, I think he was more like, look, I'm not just here because of my dad type of stuff. I actually have talent. I think that's what he was trying to prove. And he ended up changing the costume of the clown, his opening shows. Okay. And this has not happened in 1,000 years. Clown has always looked like I showed you. Pedrolino, boring white rags, like Poirot. This is what clown has always looked like 1,000 years. You know what I mean? Unchanged.
Right.
And then suddenly, Joseph Grimaldi's dressed like this. It's completely out of left field. The crowd is stunned. All other performers from other theaters take note and copy it from then on. It's kind of the thing to do. And it's like, where did this monstrous looking thing come from? You know what I mean? Like, what is this supposed to represent?
Right.
Well, specifically, it actually represents the Rakshasa demons of India. Very specifically. And because the Dibdin family was very well acquainted with India. An Indian flavor of Nephilim are the Rakshasas, giant man-eating monsters. The European flavor was the wild man, giant club-wielding, hairy man-eating monsters. The Indian version wasn't so hairy, but was still pretty creepy looking. And this is exactly what he modeled the costume of the clown on that Joseph Grimaldi wore. Joseph Grimaldi popularized his specific style of face paint, the 2 red triangles. That's all he came up with. He did not come up with the costumes. Those costumes were brought over from India by the Dibdin family and put on the main stage of the most popular form of entertainment of its time, the theatres in London. And from that day, it was solidified that the costume of a clown would look like this from then on. And it's literally a carbon copy of the costumes worn by the demons on the temples of Thailand specifically as well. I mean, I don't have the picture here, but I can get it for you very quickly. I think you guys can still see this tab, can't you? Let's just go on Thailand temple Rakshasa demon, and they come up very quickly. But this is what the costume of the clown that Joseph Grimaldi is wearing is based on.
Oh
yes.
Yeah.
It's kind of undeniable when you actually see it. Let me just cancel that and let me see. Let's go back to that. So it's just upside down. That's the only difference. So if I rotate it, so he's that way. That's not much different than that. If you understand.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's the same costume. That's all it is. It's the same thing. They just copied it. They just stole it. And it's so basically modern clowns and even the traditional classic Harlequin have always been modeled after demons, whether it's the European version or the Indian version. This is where they get their costumes from. This is why they look the way they do. It's because they are mimicking Indian specific flavors of the Nephilim, the Rakshasa demons. And I've got many. It's not really in any order. I'm sorry, it's a bit hodgepodge, but I do have images in here of more examples of Rakshasas. Here's the Raksha demon of Sri Lanka. This is a different region. Similar style. We have that's the Wild Man of Europe there. Another representation. That's more iterations of the clown costume modeled after the Rakshasas in later iterations. Let me see what else I've got here. I've got here's a Raksha mask of Rangda, the demon queen, coming out of Bali specifically, which again it has the Hindu religion at its core. This is from the Theyyam of India, and this is the dragon masks of China. The same entity, the same entities. Just and this is the Bali Barong of Bali again. So it's the same creatures, just different cultures talking about them. Here's Rangda the Demon Queen again. Another
Oh,
example of a Nephilim
wow.
creature. Pale skin, bulging eyes, big red lips, wild, crazy red hair, and multicolored skin. So this is what the Nephilim look like, guys. This is literally what they looked like.
That's creepy.
They look like clowns. And the clown costume that we have today has modeled itself after these. So that's what we get. That's where we get a clown costume from. We get it from these cultures. It's a copy of them. We have stolen it from other cultures. Specifically, Charles Dibdin Jr. and Charles Dibdin Sr. did. You know, these people in say in 1799. Here's another example of a Japanese theater. Here's another example of a Rakshasa in Hindu mythology, with the man's heads as a chain there, white skin, red hair. Here we are again. I think this is Thailand. The version of the same creatures intimately linked with snakes. Then we're going Papua New Guinea. Here's a reptile, very colourful, with slit pupils and the rest of it. These are the spirits of the dead, I think, from Buddhist traditions. You can see the Buddhist monks in the background there. In Africa, they have their own ancestor spirit worship versions. Today on the runways, they're selling clown fashion to you as one of the highest forms of fashion of 2023, L Fashion Week. They were trying to push clown fashion on the public. And here's another African example of channeling the spirits. Here's Portugal, going back to clowns of the modern day. This is the Heyoka tribes. Well, actually, this one isn't the Heyoka. This one is the Selknam tribes, which are the southern tip of South America. But in the plains and the northern plains, the Dakotas and the Nevada plains of America, you have the Pueblo clowns and the Heyoka clowns, and they also look like this too. Very similar black and white striped patterns. This is what the Nephilim look like over there. Here's Greek mythology. This is the Gorgon. This is Medusa. This is what she actually looked like, not snakes for hair. This is what Medusa really looked like. A grinning, tongue sticking out clown with bulging eyes, white skin. And she actually traditionally has red hair. Here she is on pottery. This is Medusa. Everyone thinks Medusa is a green snake lady with snakes for hair. This is what she actually looks like. This is what Medusa is classically understood to really be a representation of. And this is no different than what you saw there in India. This is Greece, by the way. This is Europe. These are continents apart, cultures apart, but they all saw the same thing. They all experienced the same thing. Even the story of Medusa here with wings, holding a horse. This thing is a giant with a big, wide, grinning smile. They come from Echidna. Now, Echidna is a siren. Echidna is a snake-legged woman who is monstrous, but she is the mother of monsters, she's called. And one of her many offspring was the three Gorgons, Medusa being one of the three sisters. And she was impregnated by Typhon, the sea dragon, basically, the god of the sea, the serpent's god of the sea. Typhon mated with a siren called Echidna, and they gave birth to this monster. That's the exact story of the Watcher angels, the serpentine seraphim angels, in this case a water version of a dragon, mixing themselves with a human woman, a siren. In the book of Enoch, it makes it very clear. The women who mated with the Watchers became sirens. The words of Enoch himself. Okay? That's where sirens come from. These serpentine, half fish, half women, half bird, half women, half snake, half woman monsters. They used to be humans, but they were turned into monsters. I've theorized this wasn't a punishment. This was done as a gift from the seraphim angels to make the women more powerful and also make it so they can give birth to giants. They had to have a genetic change first, because ordinary women give birth to a giant, they get split in half and they die. It's very simple. It's not going to work. It's an alien situation. It's going to burst out of them, But if you change their genetics to make them hardier and stronger and bigger and turn them into a siren, now they can birth your children. Do you get what I mean? And that seems to be what actually happened. And I talk about it in the book. So the Gorgon here is an offspring of that happening. This is what they look like. And this visage is everywhere. It's all over the earth. from Greece to India. Like I said, this is the image of the Rakshasa demon. This is here again in India, hitting an African tribe here doing something similar. This is doing a mating ritual. This is the serpent dance of the face changes of China. They do their own version of this. Here's a Rakshasa of India again. It's the same creature everywhere. Here's one right with its tongue sticking out, big wide grin in the middle of the Mayan calendar. They say, this represents the sun. I don't think it does represent the sun. I think it's something people actually saw at one point in the ancient past. You got the Kwakwaka'wakw tribes of North Americas, and it's everywhere. All of these things were all over the place, and every culture had to deal with them in their own way and has remembered them through their costumes and still tries to communicate with their spirits by dressing this way. This is the Phaita Kon, I think, again, of Thailand. And they dress like this, and they celebrate the Day of the Dead, basically, where the spirits of the dead wander through the village, and they dress this way to scare them away, they believe. But I think they're actually channeling them, because this culture here wears the mask to channel them instead. So they can't both be right. You can't wear a mask of a demon and scare it away, while other people are wearing demon masks and letting them in their bodies.
Right.
Your intention doesn't matter. It only works one way, and I think the possession is the more realistic version. I don't think wearing a mask is going to scare away a demon. I do not think that's the case. These things are ancient. They're clever. They're not stupid, They've been around a lot longer than we have. I don't think a mask is going to do much to dissuade them. But like I said, the similarities to clowns is ridiculous when you actually go into these cultures. Look at this one. This is Sri Lanka. This is one of their versions of the demon masks. And then let's go to Australia, the Kimberley region. You have the Wanjinas. The Wanjinas are the offspring of the rainbow serpents coming down to earth. Oh. So rainbow serpents, seraphim angels, fiery flying serpents, same thing. And the Wanjinas are their offspring. And the Wanjinas taught humanity lots of things. Civilization building stuff. That's the story of the Nephilim and the Watchers. It's the same story, just an Australian flavor to it. And they quite literally look like clowns. Look at these things. Yeah. They even have little ruffles around the neck and everything. It's actually, they have pom-poms on the chest. It's silly how much these things look like clowns. In fact, I have to show you. I can't just leave this. It's just, it's too much. The Wanjinas, Australia. So you'll find them on rock art primarily today.
Yeah.
But they still make... So the red hair is actually a halo of electricity. And the polka dots on the body are supposed to represent raindrops. They are rain and thunder and storm gods. And that ruffle is supposed to represent a cloud. And it's kind of like they are a floating head of ethereal energy. And their body is made up of water or some nonsense. But if you look at that actually looks like a reptilian human hybrid with serpent skin to me. That looks also like a clown. Mm-hmm. Like, I would say it's probably more likely that, it has arms, it has legs and everything. It's humanoid, but with odd features that aren't human, And again, that's a clown to us. It's the same costume of a clown. It's got pom-poms on its chest and everything.
What do the pom-poms mean?
I don't know. I think it's just a part of their odd-looking skin. Because you got different versions of it from more modern artists and iterations. It seems like the skin was just that pattern or striped in other cases. But these are more modern versions. Really, you go straight to the rock art. This is what you're looking at. These are the ancient representations of them, the more older representations. Wow. And they keep these going today. Only the shaman is allowed to go into the rock caves and repaint them every year to keep them in their true form. Only one elected shaman every year is allowed to do it, and they try and keep them going. And the myth goes that when a Wanjina died, it crawled into a cave and made a self-portrait. That's what the myth is. So there's the rainbow serpent and their offspring here in this representation. It's very, very bizarre.
Is this where we get the Raggedy Ann doll also?
Well, no, traditionally isn't that based off of
because it kind of looks similar to that.
It does kind of.
I think it's based on an old poem which his father used to sing to his daughter before she died. I think in commemoration to her, he made a doll that looked like her. But I don't think his daughter was even called Anne. I don't actually know. I think it's named after a poem where Raggedy Ann is mentioned, or the Raggedy Man. I think it's called actually the poem.
Okay. It just looks familiar. Like those pictures remind me of a Raggedy Ann now.
It does. Yeah, I haven't found any nefarious connection myself. Sometimes a doll is just a doll. You know, you can't draw the connection all the time. I can only draw parallels to what I can actually know and see. And what I know and see is the Wanginas look like clowns through and through. And it's likely the modern clown costume, as I showed you earlier, took traits from this particular version of Nephilim and incorporated it into the Western costume. You know, stole the image of the Wangina and added it to the Western version of a clown. Do you get what I mean? That's kind of what the Freemasons have been doing. They've been stealing features from these other costumes and making our own version in the West that we're not, and the public won't know that's what they've done. You know, it's just a bit of fun for the kids, a silly looking thing, you know. But here's the Shriners, for example. Every shrine has a clown sect within it. It's very bizarre. Here's the Gorgon on the chest of Athena. A piece of pottery. In fact, I'm just going to Google this one to make it a lot more clear. Athena pottery owl. I think owl's the best way to get what I'm after. She's heavily acquainted with owls, Athena. She always has an owl that follows her everywhere. But on her chest here, as you can see, is a clown with its tongue sticking out, the goddess Athena. And that is because that is the head of Medusa, the Gorgon, because Medusa was beheaded. And you know the story of, I think, Perseus beheaded Medusa because she was turning people to stone. And he gifted the head to Athena. And she wore it as a pendant on her chest for good luck. So she's always depicted with a Gorgonian on her chest. Anywhere Athena is, she'll have something like that on her chest. And in this particular iteration, it looks like a clown. You can't really get any closer to a clown, to be honest, than what you see in this iteration. It's ridiculous. Like, it actually does look like a clown. Wow. And that's Medusa I showed you earlier with the tongue sticking out, you know. The Nephilim literally did look like clowns. I'm not even being symbolic here. And in some more extreme cases, they look like this. But this is what you get when you cross a dragon with a human. You get a human-dragon hybrid. You get these things like the African cultures are channeling here for their ancestor spirit worships. You know, and here's another example of a famous feathered serpent god that came and messed with humanity, Quetzalcoatl. You know, every culture has these stories. Every culture has them, and the product of monsters and beasts that look crazy and colorful, and in the northern climates, hairy. Because it's colder, they need hair, you know. It's basically simple stuff. But yeah, these things were terrifying to behold. You would not want to have met one of these things or been around when these things were actually around. Thank God they're in disembodied form now. But like I said, Freemasons created the costume at the end of the day of a clown, and they continue to use it in their own circuses going forward. All circuses in the beginning in America, when America first became a thing, were all run by Freemasons, every one of them. They all came together and did a massive show called King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. Queen Sheba Circus. And here it is. This is some website talking about it. And it was a huge, epic show. I think 10 different circuses came together as one to put on this massive spectacle of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. Here's a newspaper clipping. Hang on, it's probably easier to just go to images. Here's a newspaper clipping talking about it. 3 big circuses in 3 big rings, 3 big menageries, 1 grand biblical spectacle, complete aviary, gigantic museum, 10 truly good shows merged into one. The King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. Big advertising, big posters, you know. John Robinson's 10, you know, 10 different circuses shows coming together. The biggest thing you've ever seen ever. Every single person involved in this was a Freemason. All of them. Even the posters were made by Barossi Caralfi, a member of the London Lodge. Okay, wow. All the costumes were created by the same companies who make the costumes for Freemason lodges. You know, the little aprons and the little pinnies they wear, and the medallions and everything. All the regalia for Freemason rituals, all made by the same companies and made all these costumes for this show you see here. It was all just a Freemason affair from start to finish, and with good reason. Freemasons love King Solomon. They are obsessed with trying to recreate his temple. If you just type in Freemasonry and King Solomon, I mean, Freemasonry King Solomon, it's not even like hidden. Like they love the guy. Everything about the two pillars, Joaquin and Boaz, the two pillars in front of his temple. Freemasons are obsessed with King Solomon and rebuilding his temple. That's kind of a lot of them, if not Nimrod, they count King Solomon as the first master mason, and that's why they venerate him. And obviously they have his little sidekick. I can't remember his name now. I'm drawing a blank. But there's another famous mason who died and was murdered and died keeping the secrets. And he was one of the ones who helped build the temple, and he's a common character they always refer back to as well. One of Solomon's right-hand men. But King Solomon also in tradition had a ring. He had a magic ring, and he used the ring to summon demons and bring them under his dominion, his power. Oh. And with those demons, he built the temple. They helped him build the temple. He subjugated them with a ring given to him by one of the archangels. And this is coming out of Jewish tradition primarily. And you can read the Book of Solomon about this. And if you think of a circus, okay, you have the ringmaster of a circus. Okay,
right.
Or the ring.
3 rings.
Well, yeah, that too. We'll get into that. Yeah. That's interesting, actually. That gets really weird in a minute. Like, I'm going to get to that. But the 3-ring circus is also not an accident. But you have the ringmaster traditionally, don't you? This guy here.
Yes.
Top hat, riding crop. Traditionally, you know, they say, oh, well, it's supposed to be old horse riding regalia. You know what I mean? People used to do horse tricks. It's based off of that. There's nothing too nefarious. But actually, if you look at the ringmaster and the worshipful grandmaster of a lodge, he is the only one allowed to wear a black top hat in the lodge.
Interesting.
He's the only one allowed to wear a hat because he represents Solomon, the king who wears the crown. Okay. So that's why the leader of the lodge, and the hat can change depending on where you are. And culture in Texas, they might have like more of a 10-gallon type hat thing going on. You know what I mean? Whatever they've got their own little cultural type of example of this. But traditionally, it's a black top hat, and only the worshipful grandmaster can wear one, and that is the ringleader, King Solomon, the Lord of the Ring, who has the ring to gain mastery over the demons, the ringmaster. And in a circus, the ringmaster orchestrates the ritual, the performance, and controls the clowns, which are demons, as I've explained to you. So the ringmaster controlling the clowns is no different than King Solomon controlling the demons to build his temple. Right. Circuses are Freemasonic rituals, Solomonic Freemasonic rituals. They are just a tongue-in-cheek reference to what they're doing in their lodges, just put out to the public in symbolic terminology. And they don't even, I think, Freemason top hats. I'm just off a whim here, very quickly, just trying to find an example. But I think if you go to Freemasonic information, I can't remember where it is, but you can go find it. They'll tell you it represents Solomon. The king remains covered. The courtiers standing around and take off their hats. They give you a very exoteric interpretation here. You know, nothing very hidden, but they do tell you on many of their websites, oh, the hat represents the crown of Solomon. You know, like that's they don't hide that from the public. You know, okay. It's quite well known. And like I said, they were all involved in the early circuses. So everything you see, which the early circuses did, was quite literally Freemasonic analogs, copies. And it never changed. The Shriners took over the circuses from there. Shriner circuses are the most popular circuses today in America. They're pretty much all run by Shrining. Still, there are some minor, smaller circuses, but the biggest circuses of America are run by the Shriners. They have they travel through 120 cities every year, and yeah. Why do the Shriners run circuses? It's so odd. They're a Middle Eastern themed sect of Freemasonry. It makes no sense why they would have anything to do with Western clowns in any respect at all. But it turns out if you follow it, the Oddfellows. Have you heard of these guys before?
Yes. Oddfellows.
Yeah, the Oddfellows. Yeah, and they had quite the list of members when you look into this. These guys, and their logo is 3 interlocking rings, as you can see here. And it turns out one of their members, a very famous member, was called Phineas Taylor Barnum, P.T. Barnum. He's actually right here next to this this large guy in the middle here. There he is, this old one with the grey hair. Next to, on the other side of him, you see there's Albert Pike, who was also a member of the Oddfellows. You have King George was a member of the Oddfellows. I think Charlie Chaplin was a member of the Oddfellows. Burl Ives was a member of the Oddfellows, remember correctly? Like, they're an odd mix of people. They are entertainers and world leaders. We're all members of the Oddfellows to some extent. Actors and world leaders. Very strange. But Phineas Taylor Barnum here, P.T. Barnum, The Greatest Showman, was a movie about his life, definitely making him out to be something he wasn't, but yeah. He was a charlatan, a con artist, a true master of fooling people to make money type of stuff. A member of the Oddfellows, quite a prominent member. He joined the circus game when he was 60 years old. He was very old when he joined the circus rings. And when he did join, he invented the 3-ring circus. So he brought his own lodge's symbolism into the circus himself when he decided to join. And yeah, he teamed up with Bailey, so P.T. Barnum and Bailey Circuses, and they eventually teamed up with the Ringling Brothers as well in the future. The combined, it became a big homogenous mess in the end. But yeah, they were all a part of the craft, every single one of them. And the craft still controls the major circuses today. And you have to wonder why Shriners all dressed like clowns. It doesn't make any sense, does it? Until you start thinking about what I've just told you here today. Now it might make a bit more sense why this is happening. Why is a Middle Eastern themed sect of Freemasonry dressing like clowns? Well, is it because they're channeling demons? Because they are occultists at the end of the day. They worship Lucifer. Albert Pike made this very clear in Morals and Dogma. They are occultists who are openly channeling demons, and the public have no idea. The public think it's just a bit of fun for the kids, but the truth is it has nothing to do with that. The exoteric understanding they want the public to see is something funny for the kids. These are lovable, charity-loving men, okay? Just being silly.
Right.
But the esoteric, hidden, occult understanding is they are wearing costumes to channel the spirits of the Nephilim, probably to channel fear, energy, and anything they can from people. Laughter or crying is all the same stimuli in the brain. It generates the same energy in the spirit realm. It's food to these demons. They feed off of fear or laughter. It doesn't matter which one it is. And a clown will elicit either both of those responses in an individual. You're either going to laugh or you're going to cry when you come in contact with a clown. And the spirit inside the body wearing the costume will feed off that energy. So I think that's what they're doing here. They're just working for the demons on the other side of the veil, and they get benefits. Like, it's a transactional deal. Possession is actually a very lucrative business for those involved. It's kind of like, okay, demon, I'll let you in my body, and you can use my senses. You can use my eyes, my tongue, my nose, my ears. Use whatever you want to feel that feeling that you miss so much because you don't have a body anymore. But I want something in return. I want the strength of 10 men. I want the ability to read minds, or I want the ability to do whatever. You know what I mean? There's a transaction. Make me famous, make me talented, make me whatever, you know? But there's a deal has to be made. You have to let the demon use you. And I think that's what the Shriners are involved with. Once you get above Freemasonry, you get to be a Shriner. And once you make it to that level, you're dabbling in true occult stuff. You know what I mean? Like you are dabbling with channeling and summoning demons by that point. That's what you're doing at that level. You're not messing around anymore. But publicly, you're a fun-living organization. Just dressing like clowns and having a good time, you know? But really, they're dabbling in extremely well-established, ancient, traditional rituals. I showed you all those cultures all over the earth that do this. Like, this is... To these people, it's sacred when they do this. It's not a joke. Like, they know what they're doing. They know why they wear these masks. Like, it's not like the Shriners. You know, these are wearing these masks because they want to channel the demons. They'll tell you that's why we do it. We do it to get in touch with our ancestors. They think these things are their ancestors. They think they're And they don't mean like grandma or granddad. They mean like ancient primordial gods who built their civilization. That's the Nephilim, okay? These people dress like them to let them in their bodies. They'll tell you that's why they do it. And it's an unsuccessful ritual if the demon didn't possess the person. It's usually a shaman who takes the role of doing that thing, okay? And if the shaman hasn't been possessed and doesn't give knowledge to the tribe and doesn't let the demon talk through them, then they're not really a shaman. They failed. It's a failed ritual. And they have to do stuff to prove that they've been possessed, like cut themselves and not bleed and all sorts of horrible things. The tribes in the Theum culture, like this one, will give them like chickens to eat live. And they have to rip the head off the chicken and stuff like this and eat it. And if they don't eat it, it's offensive to the spirit within them because that spirit wants to drink the blood. So you have to drink the blood so the spirit can feel it. So then you get what you want from them. You know what I mean? This is sacred stuff to these cultures. Okay, but in the West, we're just clowning around. It's just harmless. It's fun. It's silly. Don't worry about it. You know, it's not. It's serious. Like these rainforest dwelling tribes that do this know what they're doing. Okay, it's not a joke to them. We've made it a joke.
Have you said where the red noses came from yet?
Yeah, so the red nose. I think I have my theories, okay, and I've got my own working theory on this one. So there's this thing called the curse of the Celts, right? It's a real genetic condition that human beings suffer from. Wow. And the curse of the Celts is basically, it can manifest in two ways. Either a problem processing iron in the blood called hemochromatosis. I've got that, funnily enough. It's a problem I have. But another issue is rosacea. Okay, and rosacea is where you get blotches of red all over the skin because of the blood vessels on the surface of the skin are broken and damaged, and it becomes this issue where really pale people can get this. Okay, and it's really bad in many cases. Now, any race, it doesn't matter what race you are, you can get rosacea. Okay, it can happen, but it's primarily like 99.5% white people, specifically Celtic Northern European white people get this problem. So if I just type in curse of the Celts, comes up with some ideas here. This thing happens. It's not pleasant. Okay, it's not. It can get really painful as well. But end stage rosacea, when this goes to its extreme, and this is genetic, by the way, you can't catch this. You can't make it happen by drinking too much alcohol. Nothing like that. It's simply something that happens if you are genetically predisposed to have it. Okay, you have to have the genetic marker. You could end up with a rhinophyma. This is end stage, critical, at the end of the line, rosacea.
So it's not because of alcohol?
No, nothing to do with alcohol.
Okay.
It's a myth. It's an urban legend. It's purely genetic. Purely genetic. Okay, you're either going to get it or you're not. You can never touch a drop of alcohol in your entire life, and you could still develop this. Okay, it's genetic, and this is what happens. You get a giant bulbous red nose filled with pus and everything, and the only way to get rid of this is you have to shave it off and resculpt the nose with a hot wire. You get cosmetic surgery to completely remove it. You see, and shave it back into shape, make it like a normal nose shape again. It's the only way. There's no other way to get rid of it. And like I said, you're either going to get it or you're not. You cannot stop it from happening. Okay. And it's predominantly people with very pale skin that get this problem. And then the Nephilim, well, they had the palest skin. And I don't mean Caucasian white, paper white, really, really leprosy, chalky, unnaturally Venetian Ceruse makeup style paint white. They had shockingly white skin. Okay, like a vampire, right? Not like me, not pink and rosy like me, not a Caucasian. They were terrifyingly white. Like if you saw this thing, you'd think it was like a monster. You know, there's no other way to describe it. Like it's dead. It's an undead creature. You know what I mean? That's a good way to describe it. And I believe this was inherited by the daughters of Cain. And I think if you read the Book of Lamech of Cain, the Book of Lamech and Cain, and Leviathan is quite a new extra biblical text. Take it or leave it, but it gives an account of the mark of Cain and what it was. And leprous white skin is said to be the curse, basically, and it lasted for 8 generations after Cain. And when the angels came down in the 6th generation of Jared and mated with human women, the daughters of Cain specifically, then I think the extremely pale white skin was inherited from those who had the mark of Cain, which were the daughters of Cain. And mixing that with the dragon gets this pale white skin dragon hybrid thing going on. And that's why clowns look the way they do. So this is not white people. I'm not talking about white people here and Caucasians. There's some people out there who want to make my theory about race. These things are not human. They're monsters. They are human angel hybrids. They are not human. I'm not talking about human ginger people here. Okay, this is something else. This is completely far removed from humanity, as you can grasp and gather. Okay, and again, there are people out there who always want to make it that about that and bring Neanderthal into it, which I think is a load of nonsense anyway. This literally is what they look like. They look like really pale skinned weirdos. So back to the point, if you have really pale skin, you can develop rhinophymas. You can get this end stage rosacea. And I think the Nephilim, who lived into old age, developed giant bulbous red noses because of their condition, because of the way the skin is. It's quite simple, really. And yeah, I think they may have actually had giant red bulbous noses in some cases.
Wow.
Okay, and it's a real genetic thing. But I have also heard there's an account in North America of the Nung Nungs, who were also known as the noseless ones. So it could be that they had a huge gaping hole in the center of their face as well, which caused like a red blot, So it could be that too. But I'm leaning more towards this theory. I think this makes more genetic sense, and this works.
That does make sense.
Yeah, that's one thing. Another, my first idea was that the red nose is symbolic of the cannibalistic nature because they were eating people and each other. Then their mouth and nose were covered in blood. That was my first take. This is my more refined take. I think this is more likely what it was. And I think the wide mouth is because snakes, serpents dislocate jaw. Snakes have an incredibly wide jaw. And if you look at a snake from the front or a lizard from the front, it looks like they're smiling at you because of the way their mouth is shaped. It's not that they're smiling at you, though. It's not that at all.
Right.
It's just because of they have a huge mouth.
They can dislocate their jaws and make them even wider.
Yep, exactly. And I think the Nephilim could do this too. I really think they were terrifying monsters, like snake from front. So if you get like a view, it looks like it's smiling at you, doesn't it? You know what I mean?
It does. Yeah.
It's because they have these mouths, these wide mouths. You know what I mean? They were scary looking creatures. But they weren't smiling, that's for sure. But clowns have this big wide grin painted on, clown mask. Let's just go with any clown mask. And they have this big wide maw, this jaw with these huge red lips. And I think they would have had massive red lips. I think they genuinely did in many cases. I think the best example I have is this classic case here. They do actually have red lips.
Ew.
And I think a snake with lips looks weird, but humans have lips and snakes don't. So when you mix the two together, you get something weird looking like this. It's it's creepy. It is, and I think the men's hearts failed them for fear whenever these things were near them. And you have the flop around the neck, the ruffle around the clown neck. Well, actually, that is a reptilian trait. It's called a reptilian frill. I think they inherited a lot of features from their parents in many different cultures, depending on where they were and what their particular serpentine father looked like. But lizards, especially in Australia, have frills around their necks, and clowns traditionally have the ruffle around the neck. It's all just Nephilim features. It's
and
all
Queens would have the ruffles too.
Well, yeah, if you look at Queen Elizabeth, for example.
Any of them in Victoria time.
Yeah, and they painted their faces white.
Queen Elizabeth I.
Oh, wow, yeah.
She was doing all of it. She was doing the same thing.
Mm.
Definitely trying to channel something, I would
Wow.
say. Made the skull look bigger as well. Made the skin look as white as possible. She was using what's called Venetian ceruse to do that. It was very popular at the time, but it was also lead-based. And it was definitely tearing her skin apart as well as masking it.
Oh, wow.
So she was stuck in a horrible cycle of putting on this stuff to mask the fact that it was destroying her skin. But yeah, we don't use it anymore, as you can imagine. But that's how she got that unnaturally white look to her. But she also has this giant ruffle around the neck again. And when you see it from what I just said there about the reptilian frill, it definitely reframes it. And royalty, a lot of royalty, consider themselves to be that have the divine right to rule. And where do you think they get that from? Well, they believe they are the descendants, I think, of the Nephilim. They have angel blood in them, and that gives them that right above other humans. And it's possible queens like Elizabeth really leaned into it, and tried to emulate as much as they can. They're her own ancestors, shall we say. It could be that. That could be the case.
Is that the reason why red lipstick is so popular with ladies? I mean, bright red lipstick.
It could be. It could be. I mean, it was said that the Watchers did teach women how to use makeup and all sorts of tinctures. And traditionally, people have always read that verse and that passage to believe that humans were being taught this stuff to seduce men. It's all about seduction and stuff like this. But I am a lot more inclined to think actually it's a bit more complicated than that, because all these other cultures I showed you earlier. Let's just pick one at random. This guy. Let's go for maybe an African culture. There's another Rakshasa, the Kalasung Sang, the upside down demon, some serpents, some African ancestor spirit worship there, which looks identical to the Kratos of Portugal. But here we are. This is Bono practicing the same thing.
Yeah.
Because again, it's an ancient practice, the channeling demons for fame and fortune. But wherever they paint their faces, they're doing it to channel demons. They're using makeup as a tool to represent the spirits and to mirror them so they can be channeled by them, so they can be possessed by them. So it's likely the angels actually taught the use of makeup as a spiritual tool. You can use makeup to communicate with the spirit realm. I think that's likely more what people were being taught. And in the West, we see makeup as a means to deceive people or to make ourselves look like something we're not, or maybe attract a partner. You know what I mean? But I think the less talked about reason for makeup and why the angels taught it to man to corrupt them was use it as a tool to communicate with demons. I think that's what it's witchcraft, but teaching them witchcraft methods like this tribe would be doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not about making yourself look beautiful to attract a mate when you're doing this. It's about mimicking the spirits. So I feel like that's more likely what it was used for.
Oh, wow.
This is the Anu people of Japan, an very old culture in Japan. The women, when they become of age, get this tattoo on their face.
That's actually a tattoo?
Yes, it's tattooed.
Oh, my goodness.
But it's a beauty standard.
Oh.
To them, it's beautiful. It's a standard of beauty,
Wow.
something to look up to. You know what I mean? It's a symbol of womanhood and coming to to fruition in many ways. This is representing the generals of China and channeling their spirits, their ancestors.
Wow.
The generals, they call them. Again, the undead spirits from the land of the dead. There, it's everywhere. So when we see a Western version of this is not actually new. They stole it because the Nephilim looks something like this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
This is likely what the Nephilim actually. This is an AI rendition someone made for me ages ago, and I thought it was fantastic. It's like that's it. That's what they would have looked like right there. You know what I mean? That's something like this. Could you imagine?
Wow.
What would you do? And here's This is a real ancient piece of artwork here. This isn't AI. Okay, this is what man has really created to represent these things. This is what AI has rendered it as in reality. You know what I mean? And it is close, isn't it? It's something similar.
Yeah.
It's likely what they actually look like, And here's another European version, but a hairier. Is that chicken I was telling you about?
Ah, that poor chicken.
Yeah, didn't stand a chance. But you get cultures out there who like practice these methods, like boarding the heads of their babies and stretching them.
Yeah.
And you wonder why they do these things. Well, it's a beauty standard. They think elongated skulls are a sign of beauty and power. Okay, where did they get that standard from? Well, they probably got it from the Nephilim, because the Nephilim were said to have elongated skulls. And it's kind of, they're trying to emulate the ancient gods and rulers and kings, because they are symbols of power and authority. So that's why these tribes do these things. These rituals go way back to Nephilim worship at the end of the day. It's an old practice. I mean, look at these things. Like look at the fighter con here of Thailand. These are clowns. These are what we call a clown by Western standards. White skin, red hair, buck teeth, big red lips, bulging eyes. Often the tongue sticking out. Here's the possessed Indian person, the Theyan ritual. Here's the tribe, trying to communicate with the thing. It's everywhere.
That one picture with the long tongue reminds me of Gene Simmons in Kiss with the white makeup and the long tongue.
Yeah. Well, exactly.
That reminds me of Kiss.
What do you think these guys are doing?
Oh. Everyone stay away from the red lipstick.
But what do you think these guys are doing? That they are channeling demons for fame and fortune and for power. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's the same practice.
It's right in front of our faces the whole time. We just have never even really realized it.
Basically.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's actually it. I think I've got some. Let's change the view up here.
So in your younger days, when you were experiencing with the psychedelics, are these the type of things that you actually saw?
Well, you see something more like this.
Oh, okay. So that's the elves that people are talking about when they're tripping.
Yeah. They look like jesters.
Ew.
In the DMT realm.
Oh, wow.
But when they were in physical form, I've showed you what they look like. But in DMT form, disembodied, they look a bit more wavy, loosey-goosey, connected to the ethereal realm all around them. They're a bit more trippier and wider grinned and just odd looking, Just an example of like musicians who copied the aesthetic. It's kind of like they made me famous. So she wides the mouth, colors the hair, pales the skin up. Musicians know about this. This is the ancient knowledge. It's it's not having talent that gets you famous in the music industry. It's dressing like a psychedelic clown monster.
And most of them do. Also,
if you do that, you will be elevated.
Oh my goodness!
You will become famous. They'll make you famous because you are an idol, and idols get copied. And if they can get more people copying their idols and dressing this way, you're opening up more channels. And because like the secret societies run the industries, they're looking for patsies out there, musicians, up and coming musicians who dress that way.
Yeah.
And they'll choose them and they'll make them famous and they'll think they did it because they were really talented. And it's kind of like, no, you were just chosen because you dressed that way. You know what I mean? It's actually, that's the real secret of the music industry. Like it's just dressed like a clown and you're going to get famous because they want people like you front and center. They want people to copy you. You could have absolutely no talent whatsoever. They don't care. They don't care if you actually have talent or not. They just care about the way you look. Do you have the right image? And obviously if you're singing about the right stuff as well, then great, But here's another Indian ritual doing the same thing. It's even in the art industry. This is one I just talked about the other day, actually. I'll quickly share it with you. But there's an artist called Grebnelor. Her name actually is Paulina Wallenberg. Grebnelor is Wallenberg backwards. But here she is. She's an artist out there doing her thing, But if you look at this image here, this actually isn't any different from what I just showed you.
Right.
A second ago, if I can get back to that image quite quick. Here it is. So if I bring that up.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, hang on. And then I bring that up on top. She's doing the same thing. Look, she's even got the metal chains around her head.
Yeah.
Just like him. even artists know the trick. Okay. And she's been made famous, gets to go to all the galleries and do all the things. This is an Indian Theum ritual, channeling the ancestor spirits. Here she is in a gallery, just doing some avant-garde art, you know. It's hidden behind that. And look, this is her in another form. She's we know what she represents, who she's channeling. She knows what she's channeling. But this is her famous character that everyone hires her to be and do. But she's doing the same thing. She's been made famous because she has this aesthetic. It's simple. That's the trick. She has no talent. This is just her aesthetic, and she got chosen and gets to go everywhere and be put in the galleries front and center and made famous.
And these musicians and Hollywood people know what they're doing.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah. It's a big club, and we're not in it, you know. And once you know the secret, play along, and you'll go far, kid. It's that type of stuff, you know. It's no joke. This stuff is real, you know. This stuff is serious stuff. Like, and they're always pushing the new Joker on us every year in the media. They'll always revamp this. There's always going to be a new It movie. There's always going to be. They're always going to keep the clown alive in the modern psyche, so people dress like it at Halloween. You know, we got
the female Harlequin.
Yeah, Harlequin is based off of Harlequin I mentioned earlier, which is based off of the Wild Man of Europe, which again I showed you earlier. This is what the female Harlequin is actually based off of. Harlequin, you know, this guy with his slapstick and so yeah, she's not a unique character at all. She's just stolen from this. We've got the Pueblo clowns of North America. The antennaed fractal people, the beasts. These are the sacred clowns. I talk about them in the first book quite a lot, and I go into where they come from. But in the DMT realm, they look something like this. They're all They're all kind of disembodied, weird-looking fractal monster creatures, and you dress like this to channel them by looking like them. You know what I mean? That's the game. That's the aim. That's what they're doing. They're dressing this way because they're mimicking something in the spirit realm.
Makes you think twice if you want to do DMT now.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you should definitely always think twice about it. I would say. I've done it. I've been there. You know, but here's another example of those: the Rakshasas, the Chinese dragon masks, and the clown. It's all the same thing. So I've got again. Some of these masks get really horrible.
Yeah.
They get grotesque, like seriously grotesque when you actually get into them. They represented true monsters, you know, real monsters that you would not have wanted to witness or meet. And there's much variation in different cultures because, you know, not every snake is the same. There's many different species of snake, just like there was many different styles and variations of Nephilim all over the earth. Some hairy, some skinless, some have bigger mouths, some have longer teeth than others, some have paler skin, some have more colorful skin than others, whatever. Some were more weird looking and bird-like than others, some were more dragon-like than others. It's kind of, they have variation. Here's an Inuit ancestor mask, really far north, you know, as their version of the same thing. It's everywhere. Really everywhere. And this is actually a satanic cult in Czechoslovakia, I think it's Czech-Ukraine, and they dress like a clown.
Yeah.
Even they know, you know, they know what they're doing. But in the DMT realm, they look something like this now.
Oh my gosh.
But when they had physical bodies and weren't this ethereal, weird-looking mess, they look like white-skinned clowns. So jesters are more akin to this, I would say, today. And jesters traditionally were actually just those out-of-work actors from Rome found a lot of private gigs being personal funny men for kings and like influential men who were quite rich and powerful, and no one was going to tell them they couldn't have a clown or an actor, you know what I mean? And they became the confidants of the kings often, and there's many stories about history. But the jester costume originally is just a copy of a king's costume. It's a floppy crown and a silly scepter, you know what I mean? It kind of, once Harlequin came about, and then obviously the Venetian festival as well of Carnival, the masks got a bit more refined and the jester became a lot more like Harlequin. So jester, if I just type in jester, this here is a much more of a Harlequin-esque version of a jester, but the originals look more like this, and it was just to look like a king, like a floppy masked king. It wasn't ever to be looking like anything else really. But it kind of turned into this after Harlequin came around.
Right. We have them in our deck of cards.
Yeah. The wild card, the one that's outside of the game. That's right.
So they weren't for the king to be entertainers for the king. There's a different reason for the jesters then.
No, originally it was, yeah.
Okay.
But as time went on, jesters took on like a new image and a new form. I think when Harlequin became a thing in the 1600s, I think the jesters began to kind of adapt that look, that checkered look. And then they started to look more like this as time went on, rather than this, you know what I mean? Which was just, again, a silly looking king. So jesters actually have very little to do with Nephilim in the beginning, but they definitely started to become like clowns and merged with Harlequin and eventually became what we know today, which is this is the stereotypical jester look today, isn't it? Which is a lot more clown-like. And again, like I said, it's very common that people see DMT jesters. It's a very common visual when people take these psychedelics. They see these creatures on the other side that look something like this, you know, and this is because these are the Nephilim in disembodied form. That's what you're dealing with, you know, these serpent, dragon, human hybrid things. A lot of people have said, oh, they're just figments of my own imagination or something like that, or they're an aspect of myself there to teach me something about myself, you know what I mean? But really, no, these are separate entities from you who have an agenda. They hate you. You are their enemies, and they want to have your body, basically. They want you to let them in. And they'll do anything, say anything, and act like anything to make you do that. You know, and if you're ignorant of biblical history and where these things come from, you'll be open to believe anything they tell you. But the truth is, you know, they're not your friends, the DMT jesters. They do not have your best interest at heart whatsoever. They are the disembodied spirits of ancient human dragon hybrids. That's so I'd stay away. Absolutely. So there you go, guys. That's pretty much a quick rundown presentation of the whole thing for you there. Do you have any questions? Is there anything you want to go down? Anything you want to talk about?
Well, I reminded Jane a while ago that I think it was Walgreens used to give out a red foam nose when you gave blood. That was one of their campaigns for a while.
Yeah, well, actually, Red Nose Day is a really common thing as well in Canada and in the UK. Every year, it's called Comic Relief. They do a fundraiser on British television, and comedians and actors come on, and then it's all about donate money now to save the starving children in Africa or something like that, or children in hospital, you know. But to do that, you buy a red nose and you wear a red nose to take a part in the ritual every year, and they get the whole public to get involved, thinking it's charity for the kids, you know. But
oh wow,
when you think about what I'm telling you, it's really nefarious. It's actually quite dangerous. It literally is dangerous, but we just don't know that in the West. We're not privy to understand that kind of thing, and this is what I've uncovered. This is the history. This is actually what it really is, and I wouldn't have believed it myself if I hadn't been the guy who did the research. Let's put it that way. It's ridiculous. But this rabbit hole is deep.
Then we also have the Red Shoe Club, if you've ever heard of that.
Yeah, I've heard many things about what that's.
So I don't know if that has a connection with clowns wearing red shoes or demons or.
Well, the Heyoka tribes and the sacred clowns, they wear red shoes. So it could have just been a feature that clowns adopted from them originally. Again, stealing different costume pieces from different cultures and making a clown. But then obviously there is the connection to those who are drinking the blood of and or sacrificing children, making shoes out of their bodies, or wearing red shoes to stop the stains and all this type of thing during the rituals. I've heard many horrible reasons why that exists, but there's certainly a lot of evidence to say, yeah, they're all kind of in on that and taking part in that weird thing. But if it's related to clowns, I don't know. I haven't found much of a link for that other than big floppy shoes just represents big feet because it represents giants. I think it's quite simple. Yeah.
Well, it dawned on me, I know drugs is more legal in the U.S. now and slowly getting more legal, and it's more illegal over there. But it seems like the last few years, they're pushing microdosing, mushroom gummies. It's like the government is trying to push and say, oh, it's good for your mind. It'll open up your mind. And they're actually pushing so people would start getting into this and tripping and seeing this.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, they used to run tests on us in the tap water and also things back in the day, But now I think it's they're getting people to just do it themselves. Absolutely, but I think the drug culture is growing rapidly today, especially marijuana and things like that, with it being legalized. I think, we definitely live in a culture and society that's looking for spiritual answers. And I think a lot of people are turning to these entheogens, we would call them, these drugs that lead to spiritual experience or encounters with the spirit realm or God, should we say, depending how you want to define that. And I think because people don't have a biblical foundation or a way of connecting to the biblical narrative and understanding who God really is, because it's the Christian angle today is alien to the modern young person. They don't understand how it relates to them. They don't get it. I think it's an old book for an old time, written to a people who didn't know enough to understand what was really going on. So they don't bother to read it. And they've got many impressions and ideas about what Christianity actually is. They don't know all the history I just explained about the giants and the watchers and where demons come from. They don't have any of that cool stuff that hooks you in to get them interested. They're given dry, boring sermons, which they've heard 1,000 times before in the pulpits by, just can't relate to it. They have no reason to understand, why does a guy being nailed to a piece of wood save me? What does that even mean? What does being saved even mean? Like, they can't connect. There's no connection to the modern age for them. So people are turning to other answers because there's a huge God-shaped hole in them. So they turn to drugs instead because they're being told, you can have spiritual experiences. Go do this ayahuasca trip here. Go do this retreat in the rainforest in Brazil. You'll find yourself and your ego will die, or whatever that means. And they're giving all these promises that you can find spiritual fulfillment by doing these other things. When really what they need is a relationship with Christ and the Father through Christ.
Right.
Because they have no understanding that that's what they need, they're doing the drugs instead. And then what's coming to them first are these entities on the other side, and then they start telling them all sorts of crap, like, we're fifth dimensional ascended masters come to teach you how to become like us, or we're you from the future humanity, and we're here to help you evolve your consciousness to our level so you can reach our form, or we're aliens from the Pleiades constellation who've come to help mankind vibrationally ascend to the fifth dimension. They'll lie through their teeth about who they are to whoever encounters them, and they'll say whatever that person's going to believe because they know them. They are demons attached to them. They've been following them their entire life. They know how fooled they are. It's kind of like, Keith's going to eat this alien stuff up. I'm going to tell him I'm an alien. It's basic because I've watched him grow up as a kid. He loves Star Wars, Star Trek. You know what I mean? It's kind of, they know you. Right. They've been around for thousands of years. And as soon as you take a drug, it's like, he can see us now, places people. You know what I mean? It's a trick. It's a huge show, It's kind of like, but they are the disembodied spirits of Nephilim. They're demons. It's simple. There's nothing else there. Okay, and the whole biblical history explains that there is a spirit realm to the physical earth. It's like two sides of the same coin. There's a heads and a tails. We live on the head side, but the tails side is completely necessary and needs to exist for the head side to exist. Okay, it's like the plumbing in the walls of the universe is the spirit realm. It needs to be there for the thing to function. Like we need the spirit realm. It's like the code that projects the reality we live in, the game. You know what I mean? Like without the spirit realm, there wouldn't be a physical realm, and vice versa. It's the same place. There actually is no distinction. It's one unit. It's one system of creation. We just don't perceive that half, and I think that was done as a mercy to us after the flood. God set a rainbow in the sky as a covenant that he would never flood the earth again. Does that mean rainbows didn't exist before the flood? What does that mean?
Right.
Well, think about it. We perceive the color spectrum, which is the rainbow. That's our limited bandwidth. We don't see beyond that. We can't see any further.
Right.
I think that was done to us then. I think after the Nephilim were killed and after the reset happened through the flood, mankind's perception of the spirit realm was shut off to save us, because what's there now is this parasitical infection of demons everywhere, disembodied spirits of the Nephilim who couldn't leave the earth when they died. There's no holding place for them. They don't get to go to Sheol. or whatever, wherever the souls of humans go. If you argue to the end of the earth about that today, you know, but there's no place for them to go, heaven or hell or Sheol, or they're stuck on earth. They never should have existed. They're not compatible with anything but the earth. So their nefesh, their soul, their essence, their spirit stayed here when their bodies disappeared. And we could still see them and interact with them. I think there was a time when humanity was fully aware of all of it. And now they could see these weird ghost entities all over the place. But after the flood, that's gone. You can't see them anymore to save us from them, because they have nothing but bad intentions for us. And now what we do today is we're finding ways of tearing that open again. And that's what drugs do. They open up your pupils, let more light in, more information, and then you start to see more of what's actually around you. You're not seeing something that doesn't exist or seeing something that you've made up with your mind. You're letting more information in. And therefore, so you begin to perceive the realm that has been cut off from you for a good reason. And the only thing waiting for you there are demons. Nothing friendly. It's like the place is harmless, but the things that are there are dangerous. So it's best that you stay away from it, okay? It's like if you're completely naive, it's like getting out of your trench and wandering through no man's land. Like anything could happen to you. You're not prepared. You have no armor, no weapons. You are just fodder for whatever's going to come at you at that moment. It's like it's a war zone now, the spirit realm. We are at war. You know, there's a spiritual war in heaven, and you're the prize. You're the target. It's kind of, don't be an idiot. Like, don't go there. Don't risk it. What's the point? Like, you're not going to gain any special knowledge there. There's nothing there that can be taught to you that you can't learn here, or through having a relationship with God. It's kind of, you don't need the drugs to learn anything and have those spiritual experiences or a connection. It's just the creation. You're seeing more of the creation. What's that going to teach you? Really, you know. But people like read into these experiences, believe the lies they were told by the entities there, and think they become profound godlike beings with extrasensory perceptions or something. Now it's kind of like, no, you've just let a demon into your body, and now you have powers because the demon's doing stuff for you and making you feel special. You know what I mean? It's kind of, it's all smoke and mirrors. It's all tricks. It's all lies. It's just all there to keep you away from God. So that's all they can do now, you know. And it's my book is a love letter to the psychedelic community, because I've been there. And I'm trying to tell you, you've been sold a pack of lies. Like, it's all bunk. The truth is the biblical perspective. And my book hopefully gives them a bridge to get there through the clown, because it's a hook. It's interesting. It makes the Bible interesting again. You know what I mean? It brings all the fascinating stuff they're not taught in churches to the forefront. And really, it's a gospel trap. My book is a gospel trap. Like, I bring them in with the clowns and I hit them with the gospel. That's basically all my book really is. And I think it works. I've had many people tell me it's worked. I think I'm going to keep doing this, finish off this second book. And then I think that's the body of work kind of sufficiently boxed off then. And who knows what I'll do next? But there it is. Yeah, I can only say the same thing for so long. You know what I mean? But
I'm sure something else will come along.
Well, the Bible says if you lack wisdom and knowledge, just ask for it. Some people turn to drugs. Other people, you know, if you want wisdom and knowledge, go the biblical route. But the other day, I thought of a question that you may not be able to answer, but I'm going to throw it at you anyway.
Sure, we'll see.
The Nephilims, when they died, the giants, they became the demons. Well, there's still dark governmental fallen angel hybrids that are being created today, which would be dogmen, the rakes, all these creepy things. Now, if they pass away, do they become demons also, or was it just the giants becoming demons?
It's a good question. It's something I've been contending with on my own.
That means they may be increasing.
Well, I think, first of all, if you go to the book of Jasher, it talks about the time just before the flood. And what we're led to understand is that the giants were actually killed before the flood. They didn't get wiped out by the flood. It was a punishment for the watchers to watch their children be killed. And their children were the Nephilim. Okay.
Right.
Now, I don't know about the Nephilim's children, like the Nephil and the Elio.
Right.
The quarter hybrids and the eighth hybrids, you know. But the half and halves, the half angel, half human ones, the titans, the ones as big as mountains type of stuff, I think they were all wiped out about 250 years before the flood in brutal, bloody battles with each other. fighting for power and petty squabbles. Angels came down and turned them against each other and made them kill each other. You know, that was and the parents who made them, the Watchers, had to watch that happen. Their own kids eat each other alive, basically. That was the punishment. And it even talks about like the Archangel Michael witnessing it, being like, "This is too much, man." Like Michael's like, "There's no way any angel's going to do that again. Like that, the punishment's too horrible to bear." That type of stuff, you know.
Wow.
But then there's a period of time before the flood where the big giants are gone. And I think there were still little giants around and like more human than monster, you know, through hybridization and breeding, you know, the kind of watered down versions. And I think that might be where some of these wild men come from that I mentioned earlier. The tall, hairy club wielding beasts, and maybe things like Sasquatch, the Gentilag, the Yetis, things like this. And I go through that in my book. There's a whole chapter on it. You may not have got there yet, but I go
not yet.
I go through a lot of examples of hairy wild beast men all over the earth on every continent.
Yeah, because I think it depends on what your term of or how you use the word giant. Because like South America, when they say the giants survived the flood and came up into America, they were 7 to maybe 9 feet tall.
Yeah, well, I think the more closer to our time you get, the shorter they are. That's for sure. But I think the OG giants were like mountain size. They were huge. They were the size of cedar trees. You know what I mean? But I think as time went on, they very quickly, with each new generation, halved in height. You know what I mean? They were more the human gene kept coming in more than the Nephilim gene. But like being big has always been a sign of it in a sense. But I do think he got very quickly watered down. But there was a time, it says in the book of Jasher, where once the Nephilim were gone, the big ones, mankind took it upon themselves to mix DNA together. And it literally, it's described as the mixing of kinds. That's how it's written in the book of Jasher. And man started to sin against the beasts of the field, the fowl of the air, the fish of the sea, mixing one with another, and the mixing of kinds. And it talks about creating hybrid monsters. And it says humans also hybridize themselves with animals. And there's this period of time before the flood where mankind starts corrupting their own DNA. Rather than angels mixing with women and creating an abomination, mankind turned themselves into abominations. It's a bit different. You know what I mean? It's not like they made the choice themselves and did it to themselves. And they became X-Men. They used to be men. They are now X-Men, you know. They're mutants, basically, which is what we get these superhero films from, like the X-Men, you know. It's a reference to this. And Beastman is actually one of the X-Men, funnily enough, you know, when you actually look into it. But I think there's this time where mankind tried to Nephilimify themselves. That's a term I've coined. They tried to be like the Nephilim, because I think they lived in a brutal, horrible world and time where everyone was killing each other and it was brutal. Survival was the fittest, literally, you know. And I think it's an advantage to have the armor skin of a beetle during this time, or the gills of a fish and tails of a fish to breathe underwater, or the strength of a bull or something, or the legs of a horse so you can go really fast. Having these edges against your fellow man made you survive better. Right. You know, I think they took the knowledge they had learned from the Watchers and what the Nephilim had taught them, and mankind used that knowledge to corrupt themselves. And I think this is where we get our cryptids from today. I think they were all made then. So we get mermaid, and basically think of like a fish man, dog man, snake man, moth man, just something man, hybridized, Spider-Man, whatever, you know, just hybridize a human with an animal. They were all created then. Okay. And I think the species, the kinds echoed through to the future in small numbers. And that's why we have these encounters today. And it's possible they have elongated life and everything for what they've done to themselves. But when you have a flood, things can survive a flood if they're aquatic. So I think mermaids survived. I think there was a marine kingdom that got created, which are these humans who corrupted themselves. And I think, you know, sirens are a good example of this, half human, half snake or serpent hybrids. You've got the harpies, the half bird women, so they can fly above water, you know, and float on the water like a bird. If you've got hollow bones, you'll float. You know, it's no problem, like a bird.
Mm.
It's kind of, there's things you can do, you know, to give yourself an edge ready for a coming deluge. And I think many of these loopholes were created where people could survive the flood who were hybrids. So there's a story for the Canary people of, I think it's Ecuador. And the Canary people believe themselves to be the descendants of hybrid bird women. And the story goes, there was a flood. 2 brothers climbed to the top of a very tall mountain and stayed up there until the floods receded. So a long time. When the floods receded, they went back to their cave in the middle of the mountain, and it had food left for them. So they kept coming back. Every day, food was laid out for them. And then one day they discover 2 bird women are leaving the food for them. Okay. And they have the head of a parrot, or a macaw, as we'd call it, but the body of a woman and wings and everything. Anyway, there's 2 versions of this story. One of the brothers marries the bird women, and they repopulate the entire area. And the whole of the people of Ecuador are populated by these hybrid women and these 2 men. Okay. The other story is the men rapes the women. So it's 2 the violent one is the clean one for the kids. You know what I mean? But these men were not humans. They can't have been humans. Humans can't climb to the peaks of mountains during a flood and stay up there and not starve to death. Okay. Or die of the elements. These are clearly hybridized humans with an edge of some kind. They had an ability to survive and wait out a flood at the top of a mountain. That takes a hell of a skill, you know. They must have had a hardiness to them, which is not human. So these were likely hybrid humans mixing with other hybrid humans after the flood, the bird women. Okay. And that's it. There's many of these stories everywhere. I talk about them in my book. Like, the flood was everywhere, you know, and hybrids were always involved. The only other, obviously, you have a Noah story, how Noah survived. Noah was the only human who survived.
Right.
I think even his wife was corrupt. Maybe his sons might have been all right, but their wives certainly weren't. Okay. Noah was the only one left uncorrupted by this point. He was perfect in his generations and righteous as well. You know, he was both. But I think things above the sea, things under the ground, not on the surface of the earth, and things in the sea survived these hybrids. But as far as humanity goes, Noah was the only human left, and he was the last of it. And he repopulated us today through the lineages that we follow, you know, through the Old Testament to the New, all the way to Jesus to now. So I think that did happen, you know. I think there were survivors of the flood that were hybrids, and I think they are very few in number. I think they struggle to breed, and I think they exist today in dark, dingy corners of the earth where people go out hunting for them and have encounters, and we call them, like, say, like Mothman or something, or Dogman or whatever, you know, even maybe Bigfoot. I don't know where he can categorize, but some scary stories come out about Bigfoot.
Yeah,
Look into it. That guy has powers. These things have like psychic powers beyond the scope of normal, like, hybridized humans. So I'm more inclined to believe Bigfoot are more like the descendants of the original Nephilim. They have angel blood in them, therefore powers. Do you get what I mean? I think they've got more of a supernatural element to them, but a lot of these other things, these monsters, these beasts, are just hybrids, just creatures that got mashed together genetically that never should have existed. And yes, back to your main question, when they die, do they become trapped? I think so. I think they suffer the same fate as the Nephilim. I think to manipulate the body,
demons.
I think to manipulate the body is also to manipulate the soul, and to make yourself incompatible with the book of life. I think you blot yourself out from it, is what I'm saying there.
Yeah.
I think if you want to talk about unforgivable sin, that's probably it. You know, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. There's stories of like saints, like the dog-headed saint who became a follower of Christ afterwards. You know, I can't remember his name. Is it Saint
Christopher?
Saint Christopher, the dog-headed man. Yeah, it helps him across the river and all this type of stuff. And you know, this example, we have those later examples where it's possible, like hybrid men who are still around gave themselves to Christ and all this type of stuff. Maybe, I don't know, but I tend to feel like a lot of them were too far gone to be saved during this time in particular.
Well, that's why there's stories of some Sasquatch actually being kind and friendly and helping people. So I don't think they're all bad. I think some actually did go down the good realm.
Yeah, well, they have
No.
human in them. They are part human
Yeah.
at the end of the day.
Mhm.
So maybe the human side of them is what saves them in the end.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not here to say yes or no or what. I just don't know the answer to that question. But I
Right.
do know people have demonic visages and encounters with the spirit realm. They see more than just jesters there and clowns. These other weird looking creatures that are like hybrids everywhere. It's likely them. You know, I think they went the way of the Nephilim in the end. Through the corruption of the flesh, their body and soul together. And it's kind of, I don't think the body and the spirit are disconnected. I think it's all one system, you know. And I think if you corrupt the body, you're also corrupting the soul and the spirit. Especially when you get down to like a genetic manipulation level. I think a tattoo is one thing, you know, giving yourself the horns of a bull is another. It's kind of, I think there's like there's a line somewhere, and I think these people crossed it, is what I'm trying to say here. But who truly knows who kind of gonna be saved? That's not for me to say.
Right.
It's not my job to say something like that.
Well, we brought up on our show several times that about Jacob and Esau in the Bible, and Esau was red and hairy, and a lot of people are thinking now that he was a Sasquatch.
Well, I think there's a recessive gene within mankind. I think that after the flood, obviously you had Noah and his 3 sons and their wives, and Noah's wife Namar. And I think the Nephilim corruption, this hybridized corruption, made it through afterwards through them, through the wives and possibly the sons. And I think it gets skipping generations where manifestations would happen. When it came down to Jacob and Esau were chalk and cheese. You know, Jacob was a tent-dwelling man who was civilized, and, you know, but Esau was a wild man covered in red hair and crazy, you know, and bulk, and is kind of completely different and worlds apart. And it's possible that's because of this hybridization issue, this corruption in mankind. God couldn't get rid of all of it because of this issue, but he definitely made it so giants aren't walking around eating us anymore, at least, thank God. You know what I mean? It's a lot better than it was. But I think every now and then traits pop up in humanity from this corruption. Yeah. And I think we're all corrupted in some way. I don't think anybody's free from it.
Right.
We'll all go back to Noah in that sense, you know what I mean? So it's kind of, I think it's unavoidable. I think this is why we need to be born again. I think this is why we need a new heaven and earth. And I think this is why we need a savior and Christ to redeem us and to save us from this all over corruption, you know? Yeah. And I think when you're made a new creature in Christ, that's taken away from you. We'll call it the serpent seed or whatever you want to call it. People call it all sorts of things, you know. But that corrupted element to our DNA, I think, is healed, is taken away when you're born again. And you at least won't manifest the negative mental traits, you know, but maybe you'll get a horn or two or something. It happens where people just get horns for some reason, even today.
Yeah,
you know,
I've heard that. Yeah,
it happens, you know, and you get tails. People get tails and other random stuff happening, and it's because these mutations keep cropping up, you know. Because it's just in us. It's just in us. The corruption is there, and we can't help it. Which is why we, at the end of it all, we get given new light bodies. You know what I mean? And we're given a new heaven and earth, and it's all kind of refreshed and renewed. And the parasitical infection is taken out of the earth, the Nephilim demons, you know. And it's kind of, here's the new earth, the renewed earth, back to as it was before the fall. And it's kind of, I think we're all in it together till we reach that point, unfortunately. And Esau and Jacob are just, I think, a good example of that. That recessive nature within all of us that could just crop up at any generation at any moment, and always will, you know. And there's always enmity between the two. Like, I think that goes back to Adam, you know. I'll put enmity between your seed and her seed, is what God said to the serpent, you know, after she was deceived. So it's kind of, I think that enmity even continues to today. And I think you have these bloodlines that are possibly of akin to Cain or akin to Esau, who considered themselves an enemy, you know. And I think they can be saved. I think they can turn around, and that nature can be reversed in them. It's whether or not they want to accept that or not as well. It's up to them at the end of the day. It's a very complicated this topic. I'm not going to lie. I know quite a bit about little bits and theories and ideas, but I don't know the definitive answers on how to explain it all, unfortunately.
Well, one last thing I'm thinking of is you being in the UK. Yes. Have you ever studied the Sistine Chapel mural and see the Bigfoot in the cave?
No, I've not heard of that one. No, I've not heard of that one.
Well, before we end, Gerald, you want to pull that up real quick? Because I think Paul was just going to go, what? This is in the Sistine Chapel. and I accidentally came across it on Jay Dreamers or J Dreamer Z channel, and he brought it up, and I went upstairs and I went, Geralt, look at this. So we've been pulling this up on our show, and I mean, this is an old painting, and our chat is just going, what?
Let's have a look. Yeah, go for it.
And it's amazing. And then we'll show you the hanging skin too that's on it too. It's just creepy.
Hanging skin.
Yeah, it's we're going to study more of it. You know, there's got to be more to this in this painting than what we've been seeing.
So if you go to the Sistine Chapel, this is the back wall.
Okay.
And the altar. Then this is a statue of Jesus hanging on a cross. And then you have the Michelangelo painting.
Mm-hmm.
And then down here behind Christ, you see this little dark area right there. And if you start zooming in on it, you start seeing two maybe demons, whatever in a cave or whatever that mound is. Then when you really zoom in on it,
that's a Sasquatch.
It almost looks like a hairy man, wild man, Sasquatch. The front guy to me looks like a demon. It looks like he has a horn or I don't know what he is disfigured, but the one that's hiding and cowering to me looks like it has a classic head of a Bigfoot and arms and
he looks scared. But that is in the Sistine Chapel, and it just amazed me. Like, oh my.
And then the one that's in the dark there, I think looks like a Sasquatch. You notice his foot looks like a paw or whatever. And the other guy looks like he has not necessarily human, but like a demon foot or something. So they're two different entities, obviously.
Yeah.
Looks like a monkey foot.
Oh,
kind.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, these like hybrid creatures to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then if you show the skin, I don't understand this unless this thing is ripping off somebody's bodysuit. But this is just bizarre being in this painting in this church. It looks like doesn't that look like a skin?
Yeah, it wasn't one of the saints skinned alive. I believe he was. Yeah.
Oh.
One of them was skinned alive. Was it Thomas? I'm not sure. I can't remember.
I didn't know if it came from the guy next to him that looks like he's just having underwear or...
Yeah, I'm blanking here, but
oh,
let me
wow.
just quickly check on my phone. But there is a saint who was skinned alive. That was his death, his martyrdom.
Oh, that makes sense.
So it's probably a reference to him. Just off the cuff there. Saint who was skinned alive. Yeah, it's coming up here. It was Bartholomew.
I'm glad I asked this. You're answering questions for us. Yeah.
It was Bartholomew. Yeah, there's a statue here.
Oh.
He's wearing the skin. That's him skinned alive.
Okay.
And he's wearing his own skin there, as like a tunic type thing.
All right.
Wow.
Saint Bartholomew. Yeah, so it could be a reference to him.
Okay.
That's my initial thought there.
That would make more sense. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he's quite graphic, but there he is being skinned alive. So yeah, it's yeah, that one's rough. That's probably one of the worst.
Wow.
Yeah, the images of him being skinned alive.
Okay.
That's how he was martyred. So I think that might be just a reference to Saint Bartholomew more than anything. Just but the Sasquatch in the cave. That's it's a bit on the nose, isn't it? That looks just like any stereotypical Sasquatch image even today you would make. You know what I mean? Like it's. But I think these things were knocking about quite recently.
Mm-hmm.
Even around Christ time, I think these things were very prevalent and present.
Yeah.
You know, I think people were dealing with all sorts of crazy creatures at that time and during Christ time, and even thousands of years afterwards through the Middle Ages as well. I mean, look like a medieval bestiary. It's full of wild creatures and monsters and all sorts of things and dragons and like it's the things that were around and these hybrid creatures and monsters. I think have only very recently gone into obscurity and like I think maybe killed off, culled, got underground in hiding. There's less of them than ever before. So now towards it's like a novelty. But I think back then, even in Christ's time, they were everywhere. Yeah. Like, and it's kind of like a real problem, you know. And like I said, the 10th century monk was talking about a band of demons, hybrid creatures following a giant hairy club wielding beast monster. you know, and it's kind of, that was in the 10th century, in 900s, you know, so it's kind of, there's eyewitness accounts that going quite recent of these things being everywhere, and it makes sense that what Christ did, they're scared of, because, well, I can imagine if they're the descendants of the fallen angels, and they should be scared.
Right.
But if they're the descendants of humans who forsook themselves and God, another reason to be scared as well. You know, it's kind of like, what have we done? We could have been redeemed. It's that type of stuff, you know. So there's many ways you could interpret the fear and the look on that face, but interesting. And I've never seen that before. That was good.
Yeah, I don't know why they would put that in. I don't know why Michelangelo would paint that in there.
Right. Yeah.
No, I have no idea. No idea. Unless he'd seen something like that himself. Maybe it was really common during his time. Maybe. I have no idea. That was good, guys. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, well, thank you. I know it's getting late over there. I really appreciate this. It's opening everyone up to be aware of movies and the musicians and everything. I mean, it's right in front of our face. I even thought of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Didn't he have a top hat?
Yeah, well, yeah, he's a very a lot of people did back then, didn't they? In that time, it was a popular thing to wear a top hat.
Right. I mean, even Abraham Lincoln had a beaver skin hat, a top hat.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so thank you so much. I know the chat really appreciated it.
I'm trying to have a look in the chat now. Actually, I've not really had a chance to jump in, but good stuff.
Yeah, they've been talking right along with us, and I think we discussed almost everything they've brought up, or they were discussing what you brought up, basically. But I think this has been a great show and fantastic information.
Killer clowns from outer space.
Yeah, that's a movie.
Yeah. If I had $1 for every time someone said that to me, you know, I would have stopped doing this a long time ago. Killer clowns from outer space. Yeah, I know. John Wayne Gacy too. That's a good one.
Yeah, he was from Illinois. That's not that it's a bragging point, but that's our home state.
Wow.
This
is a great show.
I'm writing about him in the second book, so you can look forward to that in the future.
Oh, okay.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Some very odd connections there. Very odd. But I'll say that for another time.
Yeah.
Well, if you need us to run up to Chicago and take some pictures for you, let us know.
Oh, absolutely. I might take you up on that, to be honest. But yeah, no. Thanks for having me, guys. It's been a pleasure. Honestly, I've really enjoyed this.
Well, thank you. Well, don't go anywhere. We'll just end the show real quick. And
sure thing.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us for our afternoon show. And we will be on later on tonight for our normal Night Owl Lounge. So I hope to see everyone again tonight. And thank you so much for showing up.
Yeah, thanks everybody. We love you to death, and we'll not literally, but we love you. And we'll see you tonight on the Night Owl Lounge, like Jane says. We'll spend another 3 or 4 hours with you later on tonight, and who knows what we'll talk about tonight. Probably maybe we'll continue this subject. I don't
know. We might. Yeah.
Who knows?
So thank you everyone for joining us.
And we will see you next time. So love and peace, everybody, and keep looking up.
And keep your vibrations high.
Good night, everybody.
Much love.